Hello and welcome to a week 5 edition of the Bleacher Report Fantasy Football Show. My name is Adam Levitan of EstablishTheRun.com, as always joined, not as always, as sometimes joined by Mark Dankenbring of EstablishTheRun.com. Mark, how's it going today?
Going great, Adam. Always a fun day to talk football, and I think Week 5 presents. There's so much injury news out there for fantasy football for us to digest, and then a lot of fun games on tap for Week 5 as well. So eager to talk through some trade options with you today.
Indeed. On today's show, we're going to discuss players to trade for in case you've been ravaged by all these injuries going on around the NFL. Malik Neighbors, Tyreek Hill, of course, out for the season, and a ton more guys out for extended periods as well. This is where we separate, you know? If you're good at fantasy, if you're trying hard, when there's injuries, when there's buys, that's when we separate. It's real easy to look like a genius when everybody's healthy and there's no buys. So, yes, let's get into it here with our first player to trade for right now, and it is Rashee Rice, wide receiver for the Kansas City Chiefs. Rashee Rice is, of course, suspended for the first 6 games of the season, will make his 2025 debut in week 7. As we saw with Jordan Addison, who came off suspension just this past week, it's not like coming back from an injury. When these guys are ready to rock, let's rock, man. And so I think Rashee Rice, especially given how desperate the Chiefs are for weaponry, can come right back to a full-time role. What will that role be? It will be the short area role that has been so productive over the last couple of years with Patrick Mahomes. In other words, get matched up with a linebacker, get matched up with a nickel corner, run across his face, catch the ball, and keep running. Rashee Rice is maybe the best in the league or one of the best in the league at that. And we have the Chiefs throwing the ball a ton despite not having weaponry. Now, once they have Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy out there, they could really go nuts on their pass rate. So I really like, if you can stomach it for the next 2 weeks, just week 5 and week 6, I really like making a move for Rashee Rice right now. Mark, any thoughts on Rashee and what you might have to give up to get him?
I think Rashee Rice is, if you're fortunate enough to be 3-1 or 4-0, I think he is my favorite player to trade for in fantasy football right now. We do rest of season top 150 rankings at Established Run. We have Rashee Rice as our wide receiver 10 right now in the rest of season rankings. And, one of the things you alluded to is just that this Chiefs offense is desperate for playmakers. Travis Kelce clearly past his prime. Their running backs have been very futile to start the season, and we know that Andy Reid is going to lean on Patrick Mahomes in this past game. So we saw Xavier Worthy get back in week 4. The offense looked the best it has all season. I think once Rashee Rice is back in week 7, it'll just continue to climb up for the Chiefs. And I think someone in chat's mentioning, like, is Rashee Rice back? No, he's not back yet. But that's what makes this I think a good time to trade for him, because you do have to sit on him for a couple weeks. So probably a better move for winning teams, as I mentioned. If you're 1-3 and need some wins over the next couple weeks, it probably doesn't fit the profile. But if you're front running right now and looking ahead towards the fantasy playoffs, I think Rashee Rice is clearly the best target out there in fantasy football.
Yep. Totally agree. Absolute layup right there to make a move for Rashee Rice if you can stomach it for the next couple of weeks. Okay. Number 2 player to trade for might be a kind of a buy high situation considering how much hype is around him right now, but it is Woody Marks, rookie running back for the Houston Texans. Now, Woody Marks was a strict pass catching running back at USC. He caught over 200 passes as a college running back. If you are the Houston Texans and you have one of the worst offensive lines in the league, and you have Nick Chubb, who's like kind of sloth like out there at this point, wouldn't a good game plan be get the ball out quick to Woody Marks? Throw the ball quick to Woody Marks. I think so. And we started to see that there last week on what they were doing with Woody Marks. We actually asked, and they're starting to get it. We asked Microsoft Copilot. Yes, we asked Microsoft Copilot to show us Woody Marks' snap rate by week. Week 1, 11%. Week 2, 26%. Week 3, 47%. Week 4, 56%. If he keeps this rate up, Mark, by week 16, he's going to be at 200 and something percent of the snaps. So, anyways, I don't want to get too excited about this, Mark, but how excited are you about Woody Marks right now?
Very excited. I referenced the rest season top 150 rankings we had talking about Rashee Rice and Woody Marks were very high on as well. Have him up at RB20 right now. And it never feels great, in my opinion, to buy a player when they're coming off a 2 touchdown game. But I think this is a rare occurrence to do it just because I think we could see Woody Marks continue to consolidate the backfield work here. We have Nick Chubb as the main counterpart here. And, he's coming off a broken foot last season. He had a second catastrophic knee injury a couple years back for the Browns. So I just think we're going to see this rookie progression with Woody Marks, that he's going to continue to play more snaps. You mentioned the quick passing game being a factor here in Houston with the struggles of their offensive line. So I think Woody Marks is a great buy high right now, and it does not seem like Mixon is going to come back at all this season. It's kind of been an unkept secret in the fantasy space, but we've now seen beat writers and reporters who cover the team mention that Mixon is not going to come back anytime soon and could be out the rest of the season. So I think now is still a good time to pounce on Woody Marks.
Oh, Joe Mixon's toast. It's almost certainly over for Joe Mixon from what I understand. So yeah, sucks for Joe Mixon, but certainly excited about Woody Marks. By the way, we will get to some chats here soon. If you have a question for us, and it is a normal human question, we don't need to be berated, but if you have a normal human question for us, we'll get to as many as we can here in a minute. Let's go to our number 3 player to trade for right now. It is an injured player, George Kittle. Listen, there's always risk when you trade for injured players. They could aggravate, they could come back and not be themselves. I think the risk is worth it on George Kittle because he can separate at a position where nobody's separating. Not even Brock Bowers is separating. Trey McBride with his lack of touchdowns, it's harder for him to separate. Let's say you trade for George Kittle and he's a smash. You have a huge edge over who you're playing in the fantasy playoffs, most likely. So a bit of positional structure stuff there. I also just think George Kittle is a very, very good player on a team that needs weapons right now with everybody banged up. From what I understand, should be week 5, week 6, week 7, somewhere in there for George Kittle. So similar to Rashee Rice, you have to be able to stomach not having him for a couple weeks maybe. But I still think in the long term, it's a good move. Mark, thoughts on George Kittle's potential return?
I love this because you mentioned just how tough it is to get a separator at the tight end position. And if I'm showing up to, especially once we get to the fantasy playoffs, if I'm showing up with someone like George Kittle in the tight end position who can score, 20 to 25 points for me, I think I have a massive advantage. And the 49ers, given how they struggled last season, they have one of the softest remaining schedules in the entire NFL upcoming. They do have a late bye in week 14. So, after that, is the start of the fantasy playoffs in week 15, but they get Tennessee at home in week 15. Then they play at the Colts and get the Bears at home in week 17. So just an amazing playoff schedule as well. Kittle will be eligible to return starting in week 6. Who knows if he'll be back by then? But again, I think this is a great time to buy for a player that can really give you that league winning upside down the stretch.
All right. We are men of the people, of course, and we want to help. Let's go to some chats here. Devin Harkin says, should I trade Rashee Rice for Rome Odunze? So this is kind of the opposite of what we were talking about here, Mark, where you have Rashee Rice, you've held him this whole time. Can you cash in now that you can get someone as good as Rome Odunze? And I do think Rome Odunze is a very, very, very strong asset to have. Any thoughts on this trade, Mark?
I think those players are about equal. Honestly, they're both, I think, clear wide receiver ones the rest of the way in fantasy football. So I'm not sure I would pull the trigger. Just kind of talked up how much we love Rashee Rice. I love to have both players on my team.
Yeah.
It is a good deal, but I'm not. I honestly don't have too strong of a lean either way there.
I prefer Rashee Rice. I just feel way better about quarterback play, offensive stability. Um, Yeah, I think I prefer Rashee Rice, but part of this trade is you have to live without Rome Odunze or Rashee Rice for the next 2 weeks. So if you think you can stomach that, then that's fine. Let's go to Dwayne Bailey says, would Woody Marks still hold value with Mixon's return? That would obviously be a problem, but I think it's like 95% that Mixon's out for the year. And this is nothing new. Like we started hearing this about Joe Mixon as early as July, that Joe Mixon has really, really severe and unique injury in his foot/ankle. Philly Phil Phil DePrima says, which Cardinals running back would you start? So this is a question that captivated the fantasy community yesterday. It is a pathetic community. Nevertheless, it captivated the community. I actually didn't really know at first. I was thinking about it. I didn't know how it would go. Now I feel pretty strongly that I would start Michael Carter if I had to start any Cardinals running back. I understand that he's been behind Mary DeMarcado. People have to realize that these teams have very specific roles for their players. DeMarcado is a passing back and a special teamer. Uh, Michael Carter is a base back, more of a goal line back. So I think that Michael Carter is going to start. And when you play the Titans, you get a lot of chance for rushing touchdowns. And I think the guy most likely to get a carry inside the 5 yard line would be Michael Carter. So I would go with Michael Carter. If they get behind in this game to the Titans, you're going to want DeMarcado. But they're 7 point favorites, 7.5 point favorites. I think it's Michael Carter. Mark, any updated thoughts for you on Cardinals running back?
I think they're both going to be pretty even plays like week to week, but the differentiator this week is for me is that they are, 7 point home favorites against the Titans. So we expect them to be in a positive game script. So I agree. I lean Michael Carter in that sense, just expecting him to get 15 to 20 carries. I think if they were to be trailing, Marty Mercado would be the pass down back, but I don't think that script is all that likely here against the Titans, given what we've seen from them on the offensive side of the ball so far.
Last question for now comes from Mason Miller's burner. He says Cortland Sutton or Tony Pollard in the flex this week. So Cortland Sutton is going to have to deal with Quinyon Mitchell and this very good Eagles secondary. Tony Pollard, this will be another game without Tajay Spears, I think, here, although Tajay Spears' window has been opened to practice. That's certainly something to watch on the Tony Pollard stuff. Mark, any take on Sutton versus Pollard this week?
I think I lean Sutton just given his role in this Broncos passing offense. They are road dogs here going up against the Eagles. Sure, the Eagles have a strong secondary, but it's not like that means that no wide receivers can produce. Obviously, the Emeka Egbuka long touchdown was a bit fluky last week, but it's not like Cortland Sutton is just going to absolutely get zeroed out there. And Tony Pollard is just a tough sell for me at this point, given how anemic the Titans offense has been. So I think I lean Sutton there.
All right. Let's get back to our list of players to trade for. I want to be clear when you're making trades, like a lot depends on how your enemy, your opponent, the villain views the player. And I think that's important in this next one because I've talked to some people who are like, yeah, Jamar Chase is dead. I'm never starting Jamar Chase again. I can never use Jamar Chase. And I've talked to other people who are like, oh, of course I'm starting Jamar Chase this week. I don't care who the quarterback is. He's Jamar Chase. If you are in a league with someone who thinks Jamar Chase is totally dead with Jake Browning, they don't want to start him, they're sick of it. I like trading for Jamar Chase a lot. We have seen horrific quarterback play. Like Mac Jones had Brian Thomas absolutely cooking. Malik Neighbors was strong with Tommy DeVito and other dust balls like that. We just saw Justin Jefferson go off with Carson Wentz. Jake Browning and Jamar Chase have faced two really tough spots since Joe Burrow went down, Minnesota and Denver. The schedule is going to open up here for them at some point. So I don't want to give up on Jamar Chase. I'm not like excited about him rest of season, but if people think that he's dead, I'm more than willing to take him off their hands. Mark, am I too optimistic on Jamar Chase here with Jake Browning rest of season?
I think people are going to hate this one. I think everyone is out on the Bengals after what they've seen the last couple weeks, and so I agree. It's not like we're necessarily treating Jamar Chase as the locked in wide receiver one that he was with Joe Burrow every week, but there still can be fantasy value there. We know he has the best yards after catch profile for this Bengals offense. The matchups are going to get lighter in the next few weeks, so I think it is just an absolute rock bottom price that you can get for Jamar Chase in fantasy leagues right now. So I do think it's interesting testing the waters out there to see really what, I mean, I think people would take like, you could probably trade Woody Marks for Jamar Chase straight up. I know someone has even floated that to me as something that happened in their league. So people are very, very out on Jamar and, I think it's in fantasy, we're just kind of buying people, at different prices and Jamar Chase is rock bottom right now.
Yeah, I mean, I would much rather have Jamar Chase than Woody Marks. And I love Woody Marks, but I'd much rather have Jamar Chase than Woody Marks. Let's go to the next guy on the list. Number five player to trade for is Lad McConkey, another guy who has had a brutal, I mean, brutal September, losing third in targets behind Quentin Johnston and Keenan Allen. Um, I am worried a little bit that not about Lads himself, that the Chargers are going to start running more. Right now, they are the most pass centric team in the entire NFL. At some point, I'm a little worried they're going to go back and start becoming a running team again. But if this sticks, even if Lad McConkey doesn't get out and dominate targets ahead of the other guys, there's still enough volume to go around when they're throwing this much. Lad McConkey was one of the most productive players on a per route basis in college while competing with some really, really good other players on his team. Last year, put together one of the better rookie wide receiver seasons I've ever seen. Now we're just going to turn around and say he's dead after a month. This could go bad. Everybody else seems to think that they'd rather have Quentin Johnson and Keenan Allen rest of season. I'd still rather have Lad rest of season. I don't think that's how the market sees it, Mark. So how in or out are you on Lad rest of season?
Very in. I think this is pretty similar to the Jamar Chase situation, except you have Justin Herbert as Lad McConkey's quarterback instead of Jake Browning. So I am confidently buying Lad at this point. In his rookie season, he averaged 7 targets per game. At this point in the season, he has 27 targets through 4 games. So 1 target short of exactly matching that 7 targets per game from his rookie season. It's not that the volume hasn't been there. It's just that the production hasn't. He had a couple bad drops in week 4. I'll give you that, but I'm in the camp that Lad McConkey is going to be a very good NFL wide receiver for the rest of his career. And I'm not as concerned. I don't think about the Chargers really dialing it back. Will they continue to be like the number one team in the NFL in pass rate? Maybe not. I think the Chiefs could probably surpass them there, but I do still think they are going to lean pass heavy, just given all the praise that Jim Harbaugh heaps on Justin Herbert week in and week out. He feels like he has God himself playing quarterback for him at this point. So they're going to put the ball in his hands and let him distribute to these 3 wide receivers. I think Lad McConkey is way too undervalued right now and is a clear buy.
All right. Let's get back to the people. Some chats. Mafioso underscore Crenshaw says, thoughts on Brian Thomas Jr. Should I trade him? Oh boy. This is a tough one, Mark. We kept BTJ high in our rest of season rankings, and a lot of people thought that was crazy. I think that there's a lot of different things going on here. Brian Thomas Jr.'s wrist may be a factor. The scheme switch to Liam Cohen. They've played better defense. They've run the ball better than I thought that they would. And then also, it's going to sound crazy. Maybe Mac Jones, the gunslinger, the YOLO ball, is better than Trevor Lawrence for Brian Thomas Jr. So I'm getting a little queasy on BTJ. I would not trade him at his absolute low point here, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't at least a little queasy. Where you at on Brian Thomas Jr.?
I think he still leans in the buy low category for me. I definitely would not be trading him away, just given how down people are on him right now. There's some tape watchers, some film bros who are talking about this Liam Cohen offense and saying it's still one of the best schemed offenses in the NFL, and that in the first few weeks, they're still trying to figure out the roles of all these players and how they're gonna figure into this offense. We saw Brian Thomas Jr. kind of short arming, T-Rex arming passes over the middle early on, against the Bengals, which led to some Trevor Lawrence interceptions. But this past week, they put Brian Thomas Jr. on the outside, which is where he won consistently down the stretch last season with Mac Jones last year. I'm not the biggest Trevor Lawrence believer at this point in time, but I refuse to think that Mac Jones is, way better at distributing the ball to someone like Brian Thomas Jr. I think Trevor Lawrence can get there, and just am optimistic that this Liam Cohen scheme is going to continue to provide offensive fireworks for the Jags. So I'd be more in buy mode on BTJ than sell.
Yeah. Even if you wanted to sell BTJ, like I get it, but you got to wait till you put something in the box score. Like, what are you going to get right now? Unless there's some, big BTJ fan in your league. Let's go to Zachman 1973. He says, I have J.K. Dobbins. Should I trade him? So last week we saw the Broncos go to a bit of a series by series approach with J.K. Dobbins and R.J. Harvey. You can feel R.J. Harvey coming. That said, J.K. Dobbins has performed well this year. They love him. He's well liked in the locker room. I don't think they're just going to like kick him to the curb because RJ Harvey had one good game here. But I understand what Zach Mann is saying. It's a little worrisome that the role is going to be reduced here the more the season goes along. What do you think about trading away J.K. Dobbins right now?
This is one of the players that's brought up that I do think is a pretty good sell high right now. Dobbins scored a touchdown in his first 3 games, and then went over 100 yards this past week against the Bengals. Has a really tough matchup against the Eagles this upcoming week, and he's just not really involved in the pass game very much as well. They're also mixing in Tyler Bidet on long down and distance, third downs and in the 2-minute drill. So not only is he competing with RJ Harvey there, but also Bidet on some of these obvious pass down snaps. And the Broncos are a good team, so they should be in positive game scripts most of the time. Don't get me wrong there, but I think given that he scored touchdowns in the first 3 games and went over 100 yards in week 4, people are have a very rosy picture of Dobbins, and I think more floor games are coming for him. So I think he's a bit of a sell high.
Agreed. Let's go to Jeffrey Drake. He says, who is the best waiver wire pickup between Kendra Miller, Blake Corum, and Brashard Smith? So part of this depends on what you need. I don't know about standalone value for Blake Corum or Kendra Miller. In other words, if Alvin Kamara is not traded or gets hurt, or Kyrie Williams doesn't get hurt, I don't think you're going to be able to really start those guys. I don't see Brashard Smith ever having a workhorse role for the Chiefs, but I do think they could start using him in like a Jerick McKinnon role, and maybe it grows from there to where the point there is some standalone value. So this is a tough one based on team need. I do think there's a really good chance Alvin Kamara gets traded at the deadline. There's just no reason for the Saints to keep him on their team. And then you'd be able to finish out the season with a feature back in Kendra Miller on your team. That wouldn't happen for a few weeks or a month from now, though. So it's a tough question here, Mark. I think all 3 of these guys, if I was in a 12-team league, I think all 3 of these guys should be owned and on someone's bench. You have a favorite of these 3, Mark?
Yeah, I kind of view it as Blake Corum here, I think has the highest ceiling of any of these players. Just if Kyron Williams were to go down, that Rams, starting running back role is really valuable in fantasy. And we've seen him mix in a little bit more the last couple weeks. So I think Corum is probably number 1 for me there. Kendra Miller would be second. I do think he's going to mix in a little bit more with Alvin Kamara in his age 30 season. The Saints are a bad team. You mentioned he could get traded. He would be number 2 for me. And then Rashard Smith would be number 3. This Kansas City team just leans into the pass so much. And I don't think like Kareem Hunt and Isaiah Pacheco are really going to completely go away here. So I think Brashard Smith is like a good stash. I did pick him up in a couple 12-team leagues this week, but I think he is third on the totem pole when paired up with these other 2 guys.
Okay. Broski10 says, what is your panic level on Brock Bowers? Should I trade him? So he's been playing with a knee brace, and although he hasn't been on the injury report very much, clearly the knee's been bothering him. And Gino has played way worse than I thought that he would. Do I want to sell on Brock Bowers now at his lowest possible point? Absolutely not. And I do think that once the knee brace comes off, which it's not coming off this week, once it comes off, once he's fully healthy, I'd be I'm more optimistic about Brock Bowers. Now, do I think he's going to pay off this second round ADP? Not when Michael Mayer is taking routes and snaps away from him, and not when Gino is playing like this. But I don't want to fully panic on Bowers. Where are you at on him right now, Mark?
This one's really hard because just like I don't know how hurt Brock Bowers is, right? Like he's been playing every week. You mentioned he's not on the injury report, but he is wearing this massive knee brace. He clearly seems limited. So it's like if he continues to play through it, when is he going to be 100%? I don't know. I really have no idea. I don't know if that's a month. I don't know if that's 2 months. When we talked through George Kittle earlier, like I mentioned, loving having this tight end advantage in fantasy. So I hesitate to trade Brock Bowers right now, but I don't know if he's like a clear buy either. So I'm definitely sitting on the fence here. I lean towards keeping and just hoping that like his health gets better and he turns into the Brock Bowers that we saw last year. But it's a really tricky one, and these injuries, when these guys are playing through injuries, it's a really tough assessment, I think.
All right. Last chat comes from Omar Rodriguez, 14. He says, could I look to move Jalen Waddle based on wide receiver 1 status? I have good news for you, Omar. We were just about to talk about Jalen Waddle as we go back to our list here. The number 6 player to trade for on our list is the aforementioned Jalen Waddle. So Tyreek joined this team in 2022. We do not have a big sample without Tyreek on the field since then. Tyreek's played in almost every game. As a rookie in 2021, Jalen Waddle played without Tyreek, racked up 140 targets, wasn't overly efficient, but man, what are they going to do now? It has to be scheme stuff to Jalen Waddle. And scheme stuff in Miami's offense is so valuable. It's hard for me to sit here with Jalen Waddle and be like, now I'm going to trade him away to Omar's question. I'd rather be trading for Jalen Waddle now. I feel like the perception out there is he's not that good. Former first round pick, who the Dolphins gave an outrageous contract to, has 3 years of over 2.0 yards per route run on his resume already, which is like, I mean, over 2 point yards per route run, you're eating. You are very good at NFL football. So I really like trading for Jalen Waddle here, not trading him away. Mark, anything to add on the Jalen Waddle outlook now that Tyreek is done for the season?
I agree with that, and feeling like Jalen Waddle is a wide receiver one moving forward. And we kind of talked about on the Jamar Chase portion, like just kind of gauging what your league, how your league views these players. And if you don't think Jalen Waddle should be a wide receiver one, there are some question marks still left in Miami. Like, will Mike McDaniel make it through the rest of the season? Is Tua going to be healthy throughout the rest of the season? We've just seen kind of some of these fragile spots where the quarterbacks can go down. We saw it last year in Miami when Tua went down. This offense, you couldn't start a single player in this offense. So, I lean more towards the buy side. But if the rest of your league is viewing him as a locked in wide receiver one, and you think you can get fair value for him in return, I don't think it's the craziest sell high at this point. But I do think Waddle deserves to be in the wide receiver one conversation the rest of the way.
Seventh and final player to trade for right now is Jameson Williams. Really rough start to the year for JMO, and I am concerned that they're not giving him any easy targets, any layup targets. Everything is 20 yards, 30 yards, 50 yards down the field. It's really hard to hit on those. Now, we wouldn't be sitting here talking about him as a buy low if he had just hit on maybe one or two of those. And I think it was week 2, he hit on, I think, 2 of them, and he had a really nice game. Outside of that, they have not connected on any, but they've been close. So there's a lot of different ways it can go well for Jameson Williams. First way, they start connecting on some of these, just natural regression. Jameson Williams is a good player. Jared Goff's a good player. They're going to start connecting on some of these bombs. The other way it can start going better for Jameson Williams, throw him the ball shorter. Last year, his ADOT was around 10 yards. This year, it's around 20. Just start throwing him shorter a little bit. And I think they can make that adjustment as the season goes on under new offensive coordinator John Morton. So really like trading for JMO right now. Mark, what do you think about that one?
I agree, and this is more of a long-term play as well. I think people are just really frustrated with Jameson Williams right now. They view him as a non-starter in fantasy. He's only had one good game out of 4, and you mentioned just the deep targets down the field. People I don't think feel very confident that those are going to consistently hit. But when we look at this Lions schedule, last year they played, I think it was like 15 games in a dome or something outrageous. This year it's less, but when you look at their schedule for the rest of the season, the final 6 games that count towards fantasy for us are all in a dome there, and that's where Jameson Williams is going to thrive, and I think we'll see the connection continue to get stronger between Goff and Jameson Williams. So again, that's just another buy low guy people are frustrated with. I think it's a good time to get in on Waymo Jamo.
All right. There's our list of players to trade for Jameson Williams. What do you see here as a recurring theme? Good
Wide
players,
receivers.
wide receivers, and good players who have underperformed through the first month without a real reason for it. Jameson Williams, Jalen Waddle, Lad McConkey, Jamar Chase, George Kittle, Woody Marks, Rashee Rice. Wrap it up here with some chats from the people. Laughing Diamond said, would you trade Amari Hampton, Jaden Daniels, and Jordan Addison for Josh Allen and Terry McLaurin? Well, we have a redraft trade calculator on ETR, and I don't have that up right now. It is hard for me to think about trades like this without having the trade calculator up. My first instinct, though, Mark, is I do not want to be trading away Amari Hampton and Jordan Addison for a hurt guy in Terry McLaurin if you think Josh Allen and Daniels are relatively even. So I think I'd rather have the Hampton, Daniels, Addison side personally. Any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, it's not even close for me, preferring the Hampton Daniels Addison side. Hampton, is going to be an RB1 I think pretty easily the rest of the way. Jaden Daniels looked like they were being pretty conservative with him, and he's expected to come back and play against the Chargers this week. And then you just got Jordan Addison back off suspension. I think that's fine. Obviously, Josh Allen, QB1 in fantasy right now and looking like that the rest of the way with Lamar Jackson injured. But Terry McLaurin still out with this quad injury. We don't really have like a great timetable on him, and that injury could linger. So I think it's very easily the Hampton Daniels Addison side for me.
Uh, Damon Reed says, would you pick up Nico Collins if someone wants to trade him? So CJ Stroud, since his rookie year, man, it's been a struggle. And you can blame the offensive line or whatever. It's not been great. The one guy that he has been successful throwing to, though, is Nico Collins. It would depend to me how badly someone wants to trade away Nico Collins, but like close your eyes, bet on talent. Nico is a easy buy candidate if someone's trying to sell him. I think. Mark, any thoughts on Nico rest of season?
Agreed. Yeah, he's awesome player and connected to CJ Stroud, who, even though it's been a little rocky the last couple of years, I still believe in that connection. And while Christian Kirk came back, it doesn't seem like he's going to really take much away from Nico Collins at all. So I think, yeah, I mean, bet on talent here with Nico.
Braden Taylor says, what is the best replacement for Malik Neighbors? Well, hopefully you're watching the show and you got some ideas of players you can trade for. In terms of waivers, it's not great on the wire right now. I did add Darius Slayton in one of my leagues. I'm not like expecting him to go out and smash. However, there are a ton. I mean, Malik Neighbors was one of the best in the league at earning targets. There are a ton of targets to go around now, and Darius Slayton's going to be out there for every snap. You could also add Wan'Dale Robinson as well, but yeah, tough to answer that without knowing what your options are there. Braden Drage ATC says, who should I start this week? Stephon Diggs, Zay Flowers, or Tony Pollard? So this would be an easy one, Mark, if Lamar Jackson was starting, right? It would be Zay Flowers. I think it would not be particularly close. With Cooper Rush in there, you can start to make cases for these other guys, especially since Stephon Diggs had a nice role there last week. Any thoughts on who to start here in full PPR, Diggs, Flowers, or Pollard?
I think I lean Diggs here. We saw him run the most routes of the season, or for his season, with the Patriots. He's still coming back off that ACL tear, but there's been some exciting, I think, commentary just out of the Patriots this week. He's also going to Buffalo, which we expect the Patriots to be trailing in this game. I believe they're 9-point underdogs here. Obviously, a revenge game for Stephon Diggs. And then I love Drake May too. I think, he was one of my favorite sleeper quarterbacks coming into the season. He's, by all accounts, been playing really well so far this year. And so if Stephon Diggs is out on the field, the most that we've seen him so far this year, if that continues to trend up, I like Diggs here. And yeah, not only is Zay Flowers without Lamar Jackson right now, but they're going up against this Texans team that has a really strong secondary and pass rush. So maybe if it was like against the Bengals or a softer matchup, I would lean Zay, but I think in this week specifically, it's Diggs for me.
Last chat of the day is from Amelia123 says, WTH, I guess that's some type of slang for a word I don't want to say. WTH, do I do with Chase Brown? And then another LOL. So a lot of acronyms here from Amelia. Yeah, what do you do with Chase Brown? Well, you join the rest of us playing DFS each week where you get to start a new team each week. So that's one thing that you could do. I mean, the thing about Chase Brown is perhaps no running back was more reliant on team environment than Chase Brown. The whole thesis was that this was going to be one of the best offenses in the NFL in yards and in touchdowns, and Chase Brown was going to play on 80 to 90% of those snaps. Now they are one of the worst offenses with Jake Browning, and where does that leave Chase Brown? Again, they've played the Vikings and they've played the Broncos. Things are going to get better. I wouldn't just like cut Chase Brown or whatever. I think we just have to downgrade expectation to like a Tony Pollard level where he's an every down back on a really bad team. And that's just is what it is. So I don't know what to say, Amelia. It's just,
Uh,
it sucks.
I'll provide a little optimism, just that he has caught 7 balls the last 2 weeks with Jake Browning in there after only catching 4 the first 2 weeks. And then, when we just look at the Bengals, like they scored 13 points through 2 weeks. So if they continue to score 6.5 points per game, you're screwed. There's nothing you can do. Chase Brown's not gonna be a great fantasy player for you, but I mean, you can only expect that to come up moving forward for the Bengals as they get into softer matchups. And Chase Brown, he's gonna have the goal line role. He's gonna get some dump offs from Browning. So I don't think all hope is lost at this point, but it has been a brutal week, brutal 2 weeks here, Amelia. I feel your pain.
For sure. All right. This was fun. That is going to do it for another edition of the Bleacher Report Fantasy Football Show. Appreciate everyone being here and hanging out with us each week. For Mark, for producer Ian, for everyone behind the scenes of Bleacher Report and everyone behind the scenes at ETR, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.